People think the woods are peaceful because they're quiet, but that's the part hikers always misunderstand. The woods aren't quiet because nothing's out there. They're quiet because something is listening. These are 3 true stories from people who went deep into the wilderness and came back out with things park rangers still refuse to explain. If you're new here, subscribe and join the Nightmare Society, because after tonight, you'll never step off a trail again. He had the uniform, the badge, the radio, everything looked right, but he kept asking the same question. Are you hiking alone? Even after I already answered him twice. I hiked solo a lot, enough that I know what's normal behaviour from rangers. I know the tone they use, the questions they ask, the way their presence immediately puts you at ease. This ranger, well, he did the opposite. I was 3 days into a 5-day loop for a quiet section of Uintas in Utah. It wasn't a popular trail, long stretches with no one around, which is exactly why I chose it. The first 2 days were perfect, cold mornings, long ridges, endless trees. Late afternoon on day 3, I reached a trail junction, and that's when I heard footsteps behind me, heavy ones. I stepped aside to let whoever was coming pass. A ranger approached, tall, broad guy, maybe early 40s, full uniform, hat, jacket, radio badge and pack. Everything looked legit, but his expression didn't. He smiled at me, but it didn't reach his eyes. You hiking alone? He asked. I nodded. Yeah, just me. He stared for a moment, too long, then repeated, Just you? I laughed awkwardly. Yeah, just me. He nodded, but not as if he was acknowledging me, more like he was thinking about something else. Then he stepped off the trail and disappeared into the trees. Rangers don't wander off trail without a word, but I brushed it off. Long shifts make people weird. 2 hours later, just before dusk, I saw him again. He was ahead of me this time, standing on a rise above the trail, watching me approach. Same stiff smile, same cold eyes. When I reached him, he asked, You staying alone tonight? I stopped. That's the same question you asked earlier. He tilted his head like a confused animal. I just want to make sure you're safe. Before I could respond, his radio crackled loudly, a blast of static that made both of us flinch. Except he didn't reach for it, didn't check it, didn't even look down. He just stared at me, then walked away again. No wave, no goodbye, just turned and left. Something was wrong, deeply wrong. I hiked for another hour before setting up camp. The moment the sun dropped, the woods felt hostile, like someone was watching from behind every tree. Around 1 AM, I woke to the unmistakable sound of boots, crunching leaves, slow, purposeful, getting closer. I stayed still, breathing shallow. The footsteps stopped directly behind my tent. After several seconds of dead silence, a man's voice whispered, Are you still alone? I nearly screamed. I grabbed my knife, ready to slash the tent open and run. But the footsteps walked away, the same heavy, deliberate cadence as before. I didn't sleep. I packed in the dark and started hiking with just my headlamp. It was stupid, but staying there felt suicidal. At sunrise, I reached a ranger tower. A real ranger stepped out, groggy, holding a mug of coffee. The relief I felt almost dropped me to my knees. I told him everything, every detail, from the repeated questions to the midnight visit. He stiffened. What did the badge look like? He asked. I described it. Yellow border, region code 231, older style. He went pale. That uniform was discontinued 4 years ago. Before I could reply, he asked what radio the man was using. I described the big, brick-like model strapped to his vest. The ranger swallowed hard. Those radios were recalled. Every one of them was turned in and destroyed. A cold feeling crawled up my spine. Okay, I said. Then who the hell did I talk to? He didn't answer. He walked inside, made a call, then returned with a map and a trembling hand. No one is assigned to this entire section this week, he said. No seasonal workers, no patrols, no volunteers. You're the only living person recorded out here. Living? The only living person? I asked if someone could have stolen the uniform. He nodded slowly, but he didn't look convinced. He offered to escort me out. I didn't argue. 2 miles down the trail, his radio crackled. Softly at first, then loud. A voice came through. Calm, slow, familiar. Are you alone? The ranger froze. This wasn't his channel, this wasn't his frequency, and that wasn't his voice. We both turned around at the same time. Up on the ridge, half hidden between 2 dead trees, stood the same ranger. Only now he wasn't smiling. He wasn't even pretending. He just stood there watching us, feet slightly angled inwards, arms hanging in that strange, too still way. The ranger whispered, "Run!" We didn't look back until we reached his track. When I reported it officially, the file was quietly sealed. But here's the part I left out. Last night, 2 months later, I got a voicemail from a blocked number. Static, heavy breathing. Then that same man's voice. You were supposed to be alone. We found the campsite still warm. The fire, the mugs, the sleeping bags. But the campers were gone. And what we found hanging over the fire wasn't an animal. I'm not a ranger, but I volunteer with a search and rescue group in Montana. Most calls are dumb hikers, twisted ankles, people who think trail maps are optional. But once in a while, we get something off. This call was one of them. A family reported a missing father and teenage daughter. They'd gone camping 2 nights earlier and hadn't come back. Rangers found their truck at a remote trailhead, so our team went in. It was an 8-mile hike to the campsite. The deeper we went, the quieter the forest got. Not peaceful quiet, dead quiet. Even the insects had shut up. That's always a bad sign in search and rescue. It means something is wrong, even if you don't know what yet. We reached the clearing at noon. The first thing I noticed was the fire. It was still warm. Not hot, but warm enough that someone had been tending it recently. Hours ago, at most. The 2 mugs sat beside a log, both half full of whatever they'd been drinking. A pot hung over the fire on a tripod, steam still fogging the lid. Their sleeping bags were unzipped, open, like the people inside had stood up suddenly and never came back. No signs of a struggle, no animal tracks, nothing knocked over, just unfinished. One of our guys called out, "Hello? Sir? Anyone here?" His voice bounced off the trees, too sharp, too fast. The campsite felt staged, not messy enough, not lived in enough, like someone had set it up from memory. Our team split into pairs. My partner Casey and I checked the tree line. 30 feet from the camp, I saw something swinging. At first, I thought it was a strip of fabric hanging from a branch. Then it turned. It wasn't fabric, it was skin. A clean, almost surgical slice of hide, maybe from a deer, hung like a wind chime. But the weirdest part wasn't the skin itself, it was the stitching. hand-sewed, crude black thread, almost childlike. Someone had sewed patches of moss into it, not random, a pattern, a shape. It looked like an eye. I told Casey, and she swore under her breath, "Let's keep moving." We found more strips, 5 of them, all hanging the same way, all stitched with moss symbols. "What the hell is this?" she whispered. When you've done SAR long enough, you learn to fear 2 things, people hiding and the ones you never find. We circled back to the camp. The others looked pale. Someone had found footprints behind the tent. Bare footprints, big ones, deep ones, too deep for someone just walking. They circled the campsite, not approaching, just watching. That's when we noticed the pot. The steam had stopped, the lid had cooled, and something inside had scratched the metal. Not dented, scratched, long curved marks along the interior, like whatever was in there had been clawing to get out. I lifted the lid. Inside was a small animal trap, the kind you'd use for squirrels, but inside the trap was a dead rabbit. Only it wasn't cut open, it wasn't eaten, it was stitched, like the hide strips in the trees, with moss shapes on its back. That's when the radio static exploded through our comms. Not a signal, not someone speaking, just loud, violent static like a TV on a dead channel. Everyone's radios at once. Casey yanked hers off. "We need to go, now." Before we could pack up, something moved on the ridge above the camp. A shape, human size, but wrong. It moved too quickly, like it stepped sideways between trees without actually walking. Light bent weirdly around it, not like a shadow, but like someone standing in heat shimmer. One of our team shouted, "Hello?" No answer. The shape tilted its head, like it was studying us, like it was choosing. Then it stepped back behind a pine and didn't come out the other side, just vanished. We left. We didn't run. Running gets SAR killed. But we moved fast. Halfway back, radios came back to life. The first thing we heard was dispatch saying our names, panicked. "Repeat, do not approach the campsite. We just received a call from the missing father." We stopped dead. "What?" Casey said. "Say that again." "The father called from a ranger station near the highway. They're both safe." I felt sick. If they were safe, who the hell was camping at that site? We reached the trailhead around dusk. The father was there, exhausted, covered in mud, but alive. His daughter beside him, trembling. He told us they camped one night, then hiked out early because they didn't like the feeling of the woods. That was it. No details, no explanation. But as he walked past me, his daughter looked up and quietly said, "It wasn't the woods he didn't like." Her voice cracked. "It was the man in the trees." I turned. "What man?" She shook her head. "He didn't have a face, just holes where it should have been. He watched us sleep." The ranger escorting them took her away before I could ask more. We never got answers. We weren't allowed to go back to that site, and the official report concluded environmental confusion. But I still dream about the ridge, about that shape watching us, and I swear, sometimes I hear static when I walk in the woods alone. The first time I saw him, he was standing barefoot in the snow. The second time, he was closer. By the third time, I realized he wasn't wandering. He was following me. I was winter camping alone last February, something I'd done every year for a decade. I know the risk, I know the weather patterns, I know when to turn back. This time, I should have turned back. It was day 2 of a 3-day solo loop in the Beartooth Mountains. Heavy snow was expected overnight, but I had shelter, experience, and confidence bordering on arrogance. The climb was brutal but beautiful. Untouched snow, ice-crusted branches, deep silence, exactly the way I like it. Around sunset, the temperature plummeted faster than forecast. I was scanning for a good camp spot when I saw something in the tree line down the ridge. A man. At first I thought he was another late hiker pushing too close to dark, until I realised he wasn't wearing a jacket, or gloves, or boots, barefoot, in deep snow. He stood half behind the tree watching me. No movement, no wave, no indication he needed help, just staring. My first thought was hypothermia. People strip layers when they're severely hypothermic and hallucinating, but something about his stance felt too controlled, too intentional. And then he stepped back into the trees and vanished. I waited a minute, debating whether to follow him, but daylight was nearly gone, and no matter what, I couldn't risk searching for someone in the dark. I set up camp fast, stove lit, tarp secured, sleeping bag fluffed. I kept telling myself it was a trick of distance or a weird shadow, but I couldn't shake the image of those bare feet. Around midnight, the wind died completely. That's rare in winter storms. The calm usually comes before the worst of it, but the silence wasn't peaceful. It felt loaded, like the air was waiting. Then I heard crunching, slow, deliberate footsteps. Not an animal. Animals move with rhythm. This was uneven, human. I turned off my headlamp so the reflective fabric of my tent wouldn't glow. I listened, holding my breath. The steps stopped just beyond the tree line, 30 feet away, maybe less. I eased the zipper down an inch and peeked out. He was standing there again. Same man, same pose, same bare feet. Except this time, he was facing me directly. I whispered out, "Hey, are you okay?" He didn't move, didn't flinch, didn't react at all. His arms hung stiff at his sides. His body was angled slightly wrong, like his joints didn't line up properly. I grabbed my emergency whistle and blew it, a deafening shriek that echoed for miles. He didn't blink, not once. I scrambled out of the tent with my hatchet raised, shouting that I would call for help. When I looked up, he was gone. No sound of running, no cracking branches, no retreating footsteps, just gone. I scanned the snow with my headlamp. That's when I saw them. Footprints, human, barefoot, blue-white skin impressions in the snow. They circled my tent twice. That was the moment the fear truly set in. Humans don't walk barefoot in minus 18 degrees. They don't leave footprints without collapsing, and they don't vanish silently. I didn't sleep. I sat upright in my tent, hatchet in hand, waiting for dawn like it was a rescue helicopter. At first light, I packed in record time and headed for the ridge trail. Fresh snow had covered some tracks, but not all. I could see faint prints moving alongside my own exit path, like someone walked parallel to me. Around mid-morning, I reached the ranger station, just a small winter outpost. I told the ranger what I saw. I expected concern or at least questions. Instead, she froze. Then she asked me to describe him, every detail. When I finished, her face went pale. She stepped back into the back office and returned holding a laminated sheet. A missing persons poster. A man named Luca Hart, age 33, disappeared in 2021 during a winter storm. He'd wandered from his group, left his gear behind, and succumbed to the cold before help reached him. According to the report, his body was believed to be irretrievable due to conditions, but barefoot tracks had been found near where he was lost. Tracks that continued for nearly 2 miles before abruptly ending. The ranger looked at me and said quietly, "We still get reports sometimes. People say they see him during storms, standing still, watching, not asking for help." I asked her if he was known to be dangerous. She shook her head. "Not dangerous, just not gone." I drove home that evening, every instinct screaming that I'd escaped something I wasn't supposed to see. 2 weeks later, my doorbell camera sent a motion alert at 3:14 a.m. I opened the app. At first, I saw nothing, just my porch, dark and empty. Then I noticed the snow. A perfect set of bare footprints leading up to my front steps, and one shape near the edge of my camera's frame. Just the side of a leg, pale and unmoving, like someone was standing just outside the view, watching me again.